You ever walk into a room and suddenly can't remember why you're there? Or maybe you've been introduced to someone new only to blank on their name seconds later. It happens to all of us at some point, but when it starts happening more often, it can feel, well, a little scary, like your memory is slipping away bit by bit. And here's the thing, those moments aren't just frustrating. They chip away at your confidence. You might find yourself second-guessing whether you're losing your edge or worrying about what it means for the future. But let me tell you something important. You're not alone. Millions of people over 60 experience these so-called senior moments. The truth is, as we age, our brains naturally slow down, blood flow decreases, neural connections weaken, and multitasking gets a little harder. But this is key, it doesn't mean we're powerless. In fact, researchers have discovered that small, consistent habits can make a huge difference in keeping your mind sharp up to date. I want to show you one simple trick, a 3-minute exercise you can do every day that has the potential to transform how you think and feel. Imagine walking through your day with more clarity, remembering names without hesitation, and feeling confident again. That's exactly where we're headed. Now, I know what you might be thinking, another memory trick. How is this one any different? Well, here's the thing, this isn't about quick fixes or gimmicks. It's about understanding how your brain works and giving it the tools it needs to stay strong. Think of your memory like a garden. If you don't water it regularly, weeds start to grow, and the flowers, the things you want to remember, get buried. But if you take just a few minutes every day to nurture it, those flowers can thrive. And that's where this exercise comes in. It's called the 3-minute recall reset, and it's designed to help your brain practice pulling up memories, strengthening those neural pathways bit by bit. You don't need any fancy equipment, apps, or subscriptions, just a piece of paper, a pen, and 3 minutes of your time. That's it. Here's how it works. First, grab that paper and jot down 3 things you want to remember from yesterday. They don't have to be big, life-changing events. In fact, small details work just as well, if not better. Maybe it's the taste of your morning coffee, a phone call with an old friend, or even the way the sunlight streamed through your window. Whatever it is, write it down. Next, spend about a minute on each item, closing your eyes if it helps, and really try to picture it in your mind. What did it look like? Who was there? How did it make you feel? The goal isn't perfection, it's engagement. By focusing on these details, you're essentially telling your brain, hey, this is important, hold on to it. And over time, your brain gets better at doing just that. Now, you might be wondering, why does this simple exercise work so well? It all comes down to how your brain processes and stores information. Every time you recall a memory, your brain strengthens the connections associated with it. Think of it like paving a road. The more traffic that travels over it, the smoother and stronger it becomes. But if you never revisit those memories, the road starts to crumble, making it harder to access them later. Research shows that actively recalling information, not just passively reviewing it, is one of the most effective ways to improve memory rate. And tie-in. That's why simply writing down what happened yesterday and reflecting on it makes such a big difference. You're not just replaying events in your mind, you're reinforcing those neural pathways, making it easier to pull up similar memories in the future. And here's the best part, it's not just about remembering yesterday's coffee or phone call. This exercise trains your brain to focus on details in general. Over time, you'll notice that it's easier to remember names, faces, and even where you left your keys. It's like giving your brain a workout, but instead of lifting weights, you're flexing your memory muscles. Now let me paint a picture for you. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, grabbing your coffee, and taking just 3 minutes to jot down a few thoughts about yesterday. Maybe you remember the laughter from a phone call with your grandchild, the way their voice lit up when they told you about their school project. Or maybe it's the smell of dinner cooking. or the sound of rain tapping against the window while you read your favorite book. These little moments might seem ordinary in the moment, but when you take the time to reflect on them, they become extraordinary. And here's something interesting: this exercise doesn't just help your memory, it also helps you live more intentionally. When you know you'll be recalling your day tomorrow, you start paying closer attention today. You notice things you might have otherwise overlooked, like the way the sunlight hits the trees in the afternoon, or the kindness of a stranger at the grocery store. Life feels richer because you're fully present in it. But I'll be honest, it's not always easy to start. Maybe you're thinking, 3 minutes? I don't have time for that. Or, what if I can't remember anything important? Let me reassure you, this isn't about perfection. Some days, you might only write down one thing instead of 3, and that's okay. What matters is consistency. Even small efforts add up over time. Think of it like brushing your teeth. You don't do it once and expect perfect dental health forever. You make it part of your daily routine. This is the same idea. By dedicating just 3 minutes every day to this simple exercise, you're investing in your brain's long-term health. And trust me, your future self will thank you. I'll never forget what my friend Ed told me after he'd been doing this for a month. He said, "It's like my brain woke up again." He used to joke about forgetting what he had for breakfast, but after sticking with this habit, he started noticing improvements not just in his memory, but in how sharp and clear-headed he felt. Overall, he even stopped misplacing his glasses all the time, which, let's be honest, is a win at any age. The beauty of this trick is that it's adaptable. If writing things down feels too slow, try speaking them out loud instead. Record yourself on your phone or talk to a family member about your day. The key is to engage your brain in recalling details actively. It's not about how you do it, it's about making it a habit. Now, I know building a new habit can feel daunting, especially when life gets busy. But here's a little secret. Pair this exercise with something you already do every day. Maybe it's while you sip your morning tea, or right after you brush your teeth, or even during those quiet moments before bed. By attaching it to an existing routine, it becomes second nature, something you don't even have to think twice about. And the best part, once you get into the rhythm of it, you'll start noticing changes not just in your memory, but in how you approach each day. You'll find yourself more mindful, more appreciative of the little things, and more confident in your ability to stay sharp. It's not about turning back the clock, it's about embracing where you are and making the most of the incredible brain power you still have. You know, one of the things I love most about this exercise is how it reminds us to slow down. Life moves so fast these days, between family, friends, work, or even just keeping up with the news. It's easy to feel like you're constantly rushing from one thing to the next. And when you're always looking ahead, it's hard to appreciate what's happening right now. This simple practice of reflecting on your day helps you hit the pause button, even if it's just for 3 minutes. It gives you a chance to say, wait a second, yesterday mattered. Those moments were real, and they meant something. Whether it's a conversation with a loved one, a quiet walk outside, or even the satisfaction of crossing something off your to-do list, these little pieces of your life deserve to be noticed. And here's the thing, when you take the time to acknowledge those moments, you're not just helping your memory, you're also giving yourself permission to celebrate the small wins. Did you bake cookies for the first time in years? Write that down. Did you finally figure out how to use that new app on your phone? That counts too. These aren't just memories, they're proof that you're still growing, learning, and living fully. Now, I'll admit, there were times when I doubted whether something so simple could really make a difference. But then I started doing it myself. At first, it felt a little silly, like, am I really going to sit here and write about what I had for lunch? Over time, I began to notice something surprising. Not only was I remembering more details from my gaze, but I also felt calmer, more grounded. It was as if taking those few minutes gave me permission to let go of the noise and focus on what truly mattered. It reminded me of something my grandmother used to say: life isn't measured by how much you do, but by how much you enjoy. She lived well into her 90s. And even in her later years, she had this incredible ability to recall stories from decades ago. When I asked her secret, she smiled and said, "I paid attention." She didn't mean she kept a journal or followed some fancy program. She just meant that she stayed present. She soaked up the moments, big and small, and let them sink in. That's what this exercise is all about: paying attention. It's not about trying to memorize everything or turn yourself into some kind of superhuman brainiac. It's about training yourself to notice the richness of your life piece by piece, and giving your brain the tools it needs to hold onto those moments. Another thing I want to emphasize is that this isn't a solo journey. You don't have to do it alone. In fact, I encourage you to share it with someone else: a spouse, a sibling, a friend. Maybe it becomes a morning ritual where you both jot down your thoughts and then compare notes over breakfast. Or maybe you call up a friend once a week and talk through your reflections together. Either way, involving someone else adds an extra layer of connection and accountability. Think about it. How often do we really take the time to reflect on our days with the people closest to us? We might chat about surface-level stuff: what's for dinner, who's picking up the grandkids, but how often do we dive deeper? Hey, remember that conversation we had last night? What did you think about it? Or, did you notice how beautiful the sunset was yesterday? These kinds of questions not only strengthen your memory but also deepen your relationships. And speaking of relationships, I've heard from so many people who've tried this exercise and ended up rediscovering parts of their lives they'd forgotten about. One woman told me she started recalling childhood memories she hadn't thought about in years, like the smell of her mother's homemade soup or the sound of her father whistling in the garden. Another man said he reconnected with old hobbies he used to love, like painting or woodworking, because reflecting on his days sparked those interests again. It's amazing how much of our lives are stored away in our minds, waiting to be uncovered. This exercise doesn't just help you remember, it helps you reconnect with your past, with your present, and with the people around you. So, as you start thinking about giving this a try, I want you to approach it with curiosity and kindness toward yourself. Don't worry about getting it perfect. Some days, you might breeze through it into minutes. Other days, you might spend 10 minutes lost in thought. Both are okay. What matters is showing up day after day and giving your brain the gift of attention. And as we talk about this, I think it's important to acknowledge that memory isn't just about recalling facts or events. It's deeply tied to who we are, our identity, our experiences, the stories that shape us. When we take the time to reflect on our days, we're not just sharpening our minds, we're honoring our lives. Every moment you choose to remember is a moment you're saying, "This mattered, I mattered." That's why I want to encourage you to approach this exercise with a sense of gratitude. Not every day is going to be perfect. Some days might feel downright hard, but even in the toughest moments, there's usually something worth holding onto. Maybe it's the kindness of a stranger who held the door open for you, or the warmth of your dog curling up at your feet, or even the relief of finishing a task you've been dreading. Those small glimmers of light are worth celebrating, and writing them down helps you carry them forward. Let me share another story with you. A few years ago, I met a woman named Margaret at a community center where I was giving a talk on brain health. She was in her late 70s, sharp as a tack, and had this incredible ability to tell vivid stories from her childhood. After the session, she came up to me and said, I used to worry about losing my memory, but now I realize it's not about holding on to everything. It's about cherishing what matters most. She told me she started keeping a little notebook by her bed where she'd jot down 3 things each night before sleep. At first, it was just practical stuff, what she ate, appointments she had, but over time, it evolved. She began writing down moments that brought her joy, like watching her grandson play soccer or hearing her favorite song on the radio. And occasionally, she'd flip back through the pages and read what she'd written. Margaret said those nightly reflections became her way of staying connected not just to her memories, but to herself. She noticed patterns in what made her happiest, which helped her prioritize those things in her daily life. And when she looked back on months or even years' worth of entries, she could see how much she'd lived, how much she'd grown. It struck me then that this exercise isn't just about improving memory, it's about creating a legacy. Whether it's for yourself, your family, or future generations, these tiny snapshots of your life add up to something profound. Imagine being able to look back years from now and say, "This is who I was. This is what brought me joy. This is what I stood for." Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but what if I don't have anyone to leave these memories for? Let me tell you, it doesn't matter. This isn't about having an audience, it's about giving yourself the gift of reflection. Even if no one else ever reads your notes, the act of writing them down changes how you experience your life. It makes you more intentional, more aware, and ultimately, more fulfilled. Another thing to keep in mind is that this exercise can evolve as you do. Maybe at first, you focus on recent events, what happened yesterday or earlier that week, but over time, you might find yourself recalling older memories too. That's part of the magic. Your brain is like a treasure chest, filled with moments waiting to be rediscovered. Sometimes all it takes is a spark, a smell, a sound, or even a word to unlock something you hadn't thought about in decades. For example, one man I spoke with mentioned that while doing this exercise, he suddenly remembered playing catch with his dad in the backyard as a kid. He hadn't thought about that moment in over 50 years, but once it surfaced, it felt fresh, like it had just happened. He said it gave him a renewed appreciation for his father and inspired him to call his own son to plan a weekend together. Moments like that remind us that memory isn't just about looking back, it's also about moving forward. By reconnecting with the past, we often find clarity and inspiration for the present. So here's my challenge to you. Give this a try for just 1 week. Commit to spending 3 minutes each day reflecting on your experiences. You don't need anything fancy. A scrap of paper, a phone note, or even talking out loud will do. The key is consistency. Stick with it even if it feels awkward at first. Trust me, by the end of the week, you'll start noticing a shift not just in your memory, but in how you engage with the world around you. And here's the thing, I want you to think of this not just as an exercise, but as a gift you're giving yourself. A moment each day where you say, "This is my time. This is for me." Because let's be honest, how often do we actually carve out space in our lives to focus on ourselves? Not just physically, like going for a walk or eating healthy, but mentally and emotionally. This is your chance to slow down, tune in, and reconnect with the richness of your own life. Now, I know some of you might still feel hesitant. Maybe you're thinking, what if I don't notice any changes? Or, what if it feels like a chore? Let me reassure you, it's okay to start small. You don't have to overhaul your entire routine overnight. In fact, one of the reasons this works so well is because it's simple. There's no pressure to perform, no complicated steps to follow. Just 3 minutes to jot down a few thoughts and reflect on them. That's it. But I'll tell you what, those 3 minutes can ripple out into the rest of your day in ways you might not expect. For instance, when you take the time to recall details from yesterday, you train your brain to pay closer attention. Today, suddenly, you find yourself noticing things you might have skimmed over before, the way the leaves rustle in the wind, the sound of your grandchild's laugh, or the satisfaction of completing a task you've been putting off. Life starts feeling fuller, richer, because you're actively engaging with it. And here's something else that happens: you begin to trust your memory again. How many times have you thought, "Oh, I'll never remember that," and immediately written it down or set a reminder? Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with using tools to help us stay organized. But when we rely on them too much, we risk underestimating our own abilities. This exercise reminds you that your brain is still capable of amazing things. It gives you proof, little by little, that you can remember, and that confidence builds momentum. Think about it this way: every time you successfully recall something, your brain gets a tiny boost of dopamine, a feel-good chemical that reinforces positive behavior. It's like giving yourself a pat on the back, but on a neurological level. Over time, those little boosts add up, making it easier to tackle bigger challenges. It's not just about remembering names or places. It's about reclaiming that sense of mental sharpness and clarity that makes life feel exciting and manageable. This practice doesn't just benefit you individually. It has the potential to strengthen your relationships too. When you take the time to reflect on your interactions with others, you naturally become more attuned to those moments. Did someone make you smile yesterday? Write it down. Did a friend share something meaningful during a conversation? Recall it. These reflections remind you of the people who matter most in your life and deepen your appreciation for them. I remember talking to a man named George who started doing this exercise after his wife passed away. He told me he felt lost, like pieces of his life were slipping away along with her. At first, he struggled to come up with anything to write down. It felt overwhelming. But slowly, he began to notice little things. The way his neighbor always waved hello in the morning, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery down the street, even the sound of birds chirping outside his window. Over time, those tiny observations became anchors, grounding him in the present moment. And eventually, they helped him reconnect with his memories of his wife, not just the big milestones, but the everyday moments that made their life together special. He said it was like rediscovering parts of her he hadn't realized he'd forgotten. By reflecting on his days, he found a way to keep her memory alive in his heart while also moving forward with his own life. That's the power of this exercise. It meets you wherever you are. Whether you're looking to sharpen your mind, deepen your connections, or simply savor the beauty of everyday life, it adapts to fit your needs. And the best part, you don't need anyone's permission to start. All you need is a willingness to show up for yourself, even if it's just for 3 minutes a day. Now, I want to address something that might be lingering in the back of your mind: the fear of failure. What if you miss a day? What if you forget to write something down or can't recall enough details? Here's the truth. It's not about perfection. Life happens. Some days will flow smoothly, and others might feel chaotic. That's okay. The goal isn't to create some flawless system. It's to build a habit that supports you over the long term. If you miss a day, don't beat yourself up. Just pick it back up the next day. Progress, not perfection, is what matters here. In fact, I'd argue that the days when it feels hardest are often the ones that teach us the most. On those tough days, you might uncover something unexpected, a memory you didn't realize you needed, or a realization about what truly brings you peace. Those moments remind us that growth doesn't always look like success. Sometimes it looks like resilience. Let me leave you with this thought: your memory is like a garden. It won't thrive overnight, but with consistent care, it can flourish in ways that surprise and delight you. Each reflection, each detail you choose to hold onto, is like planting a seed. Over time, those seeds grow into something beautiful, a tapestry of experiences, emotions, and insights that remind you of who you are and how far you've come. So, as you move forward, I encourage you to approach this exercise with curiosity and compassion. Be gentle with yourself. Celebrate the small victories, and trust that every effort counts. Whether you're recalling a cherished memory, jotting down a fleeting thought, or simply taking a moment to breathe, you're investing in your well-being, and that's something worth celebrating. And you know, there's one more layer too. This that I think is so important. It's not just about remembering the past, it's about shaping the future. When you take the time to reflect on your days, you start to notice patterns. Maybe you realize how often you feel happiest when you're outdoors, or how much joy you get from spending time with certain people. These insights aren't just interesting, they're powerful. They give you clues about what truly matters to you and help guide your decisions moving forward. For example, let's say you've been doing this exercise for a few weeks, and you notice that almost every entry mentions how much you enjoyed sitting by the window with a cup of tea in the morning. That's telling you something. That quiet moment is precious to you. So maybe you decide to protect that time, even on busy days. Or perhaps you realize that most of your reflections include memories of laughing with friends or family. That might inspire you to prioritize those connections, whether it's scheduling regular phone calls or planning gatherings more often. It's like creating a roadmap for living intentionally. Instead of drifting through life on autopilot, you're actively choosing where to focus your energy. And isn't that what we all want? To live lives that feel meaningful and fulfilling. This simple practice gives you the tools to do exactly that. Now, I want to share something that might sound surprising at first. This exercise can also help you let go. Let me explain. Sometimes, the things we struggle to remember aren't random details about our day. They're tied to emotions. We cling to certain memories because they represent unresolved feelings, regrets, or fears. But when you bring those moments into the light, when you write them down and reflect on them, you begin to process them differently. It's almost like saying, I see you, I acknowledge you, and now I can move on. One woman I worked with told me she started using this exercise to work through some old grief. She'd lost her sister years ago, and while she thought she'd processed it, she realized she still carried guilt about not being there enough before she passed. As she wrote about her days, she found herself recalling small moments with her sister, their shared jokes, late-night talks, even silly arguments. At first, it was painful, but over time, it became healing. She said it helped her shift from focusing on what she hadn't done to celebrating what she had experienced together. That's the beauty of reflection. It allows us to rewrite our relationship with the past, not by erasing it, but by reframing it. By choosing which memories to hold onto and how to carry them forward, we create space for new experiences. And that's incredibly liberating. Another thing I love about this practice is how adaptable it is. You can tweak it however you need to make it work for you. If writing feels too slow, try speaking your reflections out loud. Record yourself on your phone, or better yet, call up a friend or family member and share your thoughts with them. Not only does this reinforce your memory, but it also strengthens your bond. Imagine ending each day with a quick chat about what mattered most. It's a beautiful way to stay connected. Or maybe journaling isn't your style at all. That's fine too. You could turn this into a mental exercise instead. While you're brushing your teeth, waiting in line, or taking a walk, ask yourself those same questions. What happened today? What stood out? How did it make me feel? The key is consistency, not perfection. Find what works for you and stick with it. And here's a practical tip: if you're worried about forgetting to do this, pair it with an existing habit. Maybe it's right after you pour your morning coffee, or while you're winding down before bed. Anchor it to something you already do every day, so it becomes second nature. Over time, it won't feel like an extra task. It'll just be part of your routine, like brushing your hair or checking the weather. But let me circle back to something I mentioned earlier. Don't underestimate the power of starting small. If committing to 3 minutes feels overwhelming, start with 1 minute. Just pick one thing from your day and reflect on it. Then, once you're comfortable, gradually increase the time. Remember, progress is cumulative. Even tiny efforts add up over time. I'll be honest, I didn't always believe this myself. There was a period in my life when I felt stuck, like I wasn't growing or learning anymore. I kept waiting for some big epiphany or breakthrough, but nothing came. Then a mentor suggested I try keeping a daily reflection journal. At first, I rolled my eyes. How is writing down random thoughts going to change anything? But I decided to give it a shot anyway. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. I started noticing patterns in my thinking, areas where I was holding myself back, and opportunities I hadn't seen before. More importantly, I began to feel more present in my own life, instead of rushing from one thing to the next. I found myself pausing to appreciate the little moments, the warmth of sunlight on my face, the sound of laughter during dinner, the satisfaction of crossing something off my list. Those tiny shifts added up to something profound, a renewed sense of purpose and clarity. That's what I hope for you, that this exercise becomes more than just a memory booster. I hope it helps you reconnect with who you are, rediscover what brings you joy, and remind yourself that your life is worth paying attention to. Because it is. Every single day, no matter how ordinary it might seem, holds moments worth remembering. So, as you prepare to give this a try, I want you to approach it with an open heart and a curious mind. Don't worry about getting it right. Just show up for yourself. Even if it's just for a few minutes, trust that every effort counts, every reflection matters, and every memory has value. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Share it with someone, a partner, a friend, a sibling, or talk about it in the comments below. Building community around practices like this makes them even more impactful. And you know, there's something else I want to touch on, something that doesn't get talked about enough when it comes to memory and aging. It's this idea that our worth isn't tied to how much we remember or forget. So often we measure ourselves against these unrealistic expectations, like, I should be able to recall everything perfectly, or, if I can't remember someone's name, I must be slipping. But here's the truth. Your value has nothing to do with how sharp your memory is. You are so much more than what you can or can't recall. That's why I think it's important to approach this exercise not as a test of your abilities, but as a celebration of your experiences. Every moment you choose to reflect on is a testament to the richness of your life. Whether it's a conversation with a loved one, a quiet moment by yourself, or even the frustration of losing your keys, those moments shape who you are. They make you you, and that's something to be proud of. Let me tell you a story that really drives this home for me. A few years ago, I met a woman named Ruth at a senior center where I was leading a workshop on brain health. She was in her early 80s, and she had this incredible laugh that could light up an entire room. During the session, she shared that she used to beat herself up over forgetting things, names, dates, details from stories she wanted to tell. She said it made her feel like she was losing pieces of herself. But then she started keeping a little notebook, just jotting down a few lines each day about what stood out to her. At first, it was practical stuff, what she ate, appointments she had, but over time, it evolved into something deeper. She began